The Substance stars Demi Moore as Elizabeth Sparkle. She plays a woman who you can tell used to be a very big deal back in the day when she was a little bit younger, but as what tends to happen in Hollywood, as she gets a bit older, Hollywood is ready to push her out for the new younger woman. This results in her, on her 50th birthday, getting fired from her job, but she is offered a mysterious substance that can turn her into a more perfect version of herself as stated in the film. This version of herself is played by Margaret Qualley, and it really, I think, the strength of this movie is that substance thing and that kind of concept, which I think is really strong, of kind of turning yourself into a younger version of yourself, and also the negative ramifications that can come from doing that. There's so much to talk about with this movie. It's so full of life with extreme close-ups, really fast-paced editing, a really interesting score, and two fantastic performances by Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, who both, I thought, completely knocked it out of the park. There's a lot to like about this movie. I think my favorite thing might have been just the effects work in this, which I think there probably was some CGI in here. In fact, I'm sure there was at certain parts, but there was a ton of practical effects as well. And one thing I talked about weirdly in my Ernest Scared Stupid review that I made, which is a weird thing I did, but check that out. It's on this channel if you want. One of the things I talked about, though, is how when you have a practical effect, it can allow for the people to actually interact with it. It can create more of a gross nature to it. You can be wet in a way that you can't with a CGI effect, and I think that really played to the strength of this movie. I did have kind of one major critique with this film that is it's something where I'm trying to figure out if I should say it before spoilers or after spoilers. I'll give a toned down version of it now, and then I'll give, without getting into spoilers, and then I'll talk about it more when it gets into spoilers. But some of the character motivations, and specifically the main character motivation, didn't really make a lot of sense to me throughout the course of this movie. I fully understood the beginning setup part of, okay, she wants to be perceived as younger and perceived as more quote-unquote beautiful, even though, still a very attractive woman, just obviously by Hollywood standards can have the issues there. It's also worth mentioning with this film, it gets completely off the rails in the third act. I mean, this is not a film that is shy in any way. It is willing to take some leaps and to take some chances here. And I think most of that worked for me. I do have to say, so I watched this in a packed theater, and there were some people kind of sitting below me to the left that were like, just belly laughing at seemingly everything that was happening in the third act, even things that weren't even jokes. So that was, I feel like, kind of distracting a little bit when there's just that much laughter going on. Like, some parts made sense, but then it was like there were things that weren't even jokes, just like a thing that happened, and they were just busting out laughing. So definitely is gonna influence my feelings on that a little bit. Because I don't think it was just going for humor towards that part, but obviously it's hard to feel some of the other emotions when you have something like that. Hey, that's movie theaters. I do have to say, definitely it's still worth going to see it in a crowd just for the reactions that happen in certain parts during this movie, because yeah, it does go places, certainly. But should you see The Substance, first, I gotta give a content warning at the beginning, as I kind of touched on. A lot of body horror in this, and some tough body horror as well. I went with my fiance, who told her going in, like, yeah, there might be some body horror, and she's like, oh yeah, that's fine. And afterwards, she's like, okay, well, I didn't know it was gonna be that much. So like, if you're particularly squeamish of that kind of thing, definitely this one might not be the one for you. Definitely a hard R here with The Substance, a lot of nudity as well in this one, so maybe not the one to go with your parents, all that stuff. But as a whole, I found this one to really fly by. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in this, although I think I am lower on it than it has like a 4.1 on Letterboxd. Like, a lot of people are really liking this one. I'm not quite there. I do think that there is some parts that drag, especially in the middle, again, largely due to, in my opinion, some character motivation that just didn't fully work for me. I do think the good parts of this movie, though, are great. The first 30 minutes of this movie is, in my opinion, like 10 out of 10. Like I was ready to, I had a thought like around that point, like this is just gonna be my favorite movie of the year. Like this is fantastic. It just did not keep that pace, and it really does kind of feel like three different movies. But yeah, let's get into spoilers now. My rating's gonna be a 6 out of 10. Like I said, a lot of good stuff here. I really enjoyed the body horror aspects of it. I thought that was fun. Wasn't a movie that particularly scared me, and I did think it dragged a bit in the middle, but there's still some really interesting stuff, and I love the editing and the score and the the tension that was still built during certain scenes, especially the initial use of the substance scene. So yeah, that's my spoiler-free review. Let's get into spoilers and talk about maybe be able to talk about some of my issues and some of the things I liked in more detail. So I touched on it a little bit earlier, but couldn't really get into too much detail, so I'm going to try to get into more detail now about my biggest complaint with the character motivation, which is I never really understood why Demi Moore's character wanted the substance in the first place. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong. I get why she would want to be like a younger version of herself. I can understand that logic because, like, sure, like, yeah, I get it. Like, that's a very real thing, especially with women having body image issues, especially as older women. Like, yeah, that part totally get. The thing, though, is that the substance doesn't appear to actually have you become the younger woman. It seemed like the Margaret Qualley character, Sue, is someone who I think my read of it, and it wasn't very clear, I believe my read of it is she sort of has the same brain as the Demi Moore character, Elizabeth, but is just, it's kind of a different consciousness. They don't experience each other's consciousness. One lives for a week and then the other lives for a week. And this was shown because we would see Sue walks out and then is surprised at how messy the apartment is, leading us to believe that like they're not living through each other's eyes. In this part, again, it's possible I missed something, but I didn't really realize that was happening until like kind of as it was going on. Like at first, I just assumed that the way it would work is that they're both the same consciousness, but that one lives 1 week and then the other lives as the different body the other week. You kind of swap bodies, but same consciousness, not take turns living, which led to just a lot of confusion as to how exactly this worked. Like at one point, Elizabeth meets an older man who says, yeah, 7 days is a long time, huh? But again, the way I'm viewing it, you don't live as your younger version, right? The younger version is just a completely different version of you. So why is this benefiting you? Elizabeth is eventually told that she can stop the experiment at any moment. And again, what the movie is trying to go for, I think is really cool, of like, she doesn't end the experiment because she wants to be the younger version of herself so much that she's willing to let it completely ruin her life and ruin her physical health. This is what the movie is essentially going for. It's sort of a metaphor for how if you obsess over trying to look as beautiful as possible at the extent of your health, it ends up causing you more damage than if you just understand that aging is a natural process and you are going to be older and really you should focus on being healthy, not being beautiful. However, when I'm kind of sitting here saying, why wouldn't you just tap out if you're not being able to live as the beautiful version of yourself anyway? What's the benefit here? I just didn't fully, it made no sense to me. And that's a long part of the movie. That's like an hour of the movie is this aspect. And I think it could have been, I would have really liked it had I understood kind of that aspect of everything. So yeah, that was interesting. I did find this movie funny. I thought it was a funny movie. Like, some things, I guess I could have touched on this in pre-spoilers, but it's very much every side character other than Sue and Elizabeth are complete caricatures. I mean, they're just, like the Dennis Quaid character named Harvey, kind of a bit on the nose there, a producer named Harvey, but that's by design. Someone who, is just this complete, like, douchebag guy. That's what the movie's going for. There is silliness in this movie, and there is suspension of disbelief that happens throughout. Like, for example, like there's a live New Year's Eve show, but all the women are topless. I'm like, that seems like that's not usually how that works. And even things such as the fact that it's just called like the show, or like, even just the fact that there's you can become that famous as an acrobatic instructor. I don't know, or acrobatic show host, I should say. I don't know how much that works, but again, that's so much not the point of the movie. Who cares, right? The only reason why I get hung up on the character motivation thing is because that was the point of the movie. The whole point of the movie was seeing her progressively ignore her own physical health at hoping to be beautiful. but it didn't that part didn't fully hit for me, and kind of why I knocked off a decent chunk of the movie because of that. Because like I said, that beginning stuff was so good, and the whole going through the way that we see the substance work, and like the fact that like Margaret Qualley comes out of Demi Moore's back and it's just like sew it back up, you see it heal, and like the logistics of like, okay, now I gotta hide the body in case someone shows up, like all that stuff was just really fascinating to me. But yeah, unfortunately, this is just another horror movie. I feel like a decent amount of the reviews on this channel are like, here's this horror movie I was really excited for that I ended up thinking was only okay. That's another one here with The Substance. Wasn't crazy about it. Seems like a lot of other people are big fans of it, so maybe still check it out if you've listened this far. It still seems like your kind of thing. I would still say is worth a watch if it seems like your kind of thing, but just wasn't my favorite personally. But again, 6 out of 10, that's a good score. That's a positive score in my opinion. A 5 out of 10, I feel like it's still like a solid movie. 6 out of 10 is a good movie. That's how I view it. So good movie, just had some issues in my opinion. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.